before leaving his family's Inglewood home on the evening of September 27, 2001. Christopher Florence reminded his mother to wait up for him. He'd be back from his date, he'd promised, in time to watch their favorite television show together. It was one of the few promises her son ever broke, Brenda Florence said. Police said Christopher Florence, a 21-year-old Neiman Marcus receiving clerk, made a wrong turn down a one-way street. A man at the end of the block, mistaking him for a rival gang member, aimed a 9mm handgun at his head and pulled the trigger. When the detectives came to tell Florence that her son had been killed, she dropped to the floor. She begged them to kill her too. But worse was yet to come. Rowdy Nation TV, welcome back to the channel. Do me a favor, guys. Click that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, so anytime I drop a video, you guys can be notified. Let's get to it. In the tight-knit Florence family, there were 4 brothers, and they all looked out for each other. After their father's death from multiple sclerosis, they also looked after their mother. At the time of his death, Christopher lived at home with his mother, as did his brother Brian, age 17. Michael, 27, owned a condo nearby and lived with his fiancée. Tori, 29, lived with his fiancée and a daughter in a home he had owned. The 3 older brothers worked. Brian was still in high school. None had a criminal record, and none were involved in gangs. They weren't risk takers until Christopher died. Inglewood police officer Martin Sissick, who had come to know the family years before when Michael was a police explorer, noticed how distraught the brothers were when he stopped by to express his condolences after Christopher's slaying. Michael was particularly upset and wanted to do anything to find his brother's killers. Anything that he could, Officer Sissick later testified. 2 nights after Christopher's death, a woman who identified herself as Nicole called to say she had information about the killing. The brothers agreed to a meeting. Shortly after receiving the call, Michael called Officer Sissick. The officer told him to stay home and let the police handle the investigation. Instead, desperate for information, the 3 brothers, along with their friend Floyd Watson, drove to Century Boulevard and Doty Avenue in Inglewood, an area controlled by a violent street gang known as Crenshaw Mafia. As they drove by the Hollywood Park Casino about midnight, a Ford Contour pulled alongside their car. Armstrong, wearing a red sweatshirt with a skull and crossbones, leaned out a car window and fired 6 times. 1 bullet struck Michael in the head. Another hit Tony in the neck. Brian and Watson ducked down in the back seat. When the shooting stopped, Brian looked up to see his 2 brothers slumped over. He and Watson, fearful that they too would be killed, jumped out and flagged down passing cars. "They're gonna shoot me," Brian hysterically told an electrician who stopped his vehicle. "They're gonna, kill me." Brian called 911 before returning to where Michael lay dead and Tori was taking his last breaths. Brenda Florence later testified that she had heard the gunfire as she sat in her living room that night. "I heard the shots that killed my children," she said. After Tori and Michael Florence were killed, police learned that Armstrong, a known Crenshaw Mafia gang member, had been involved in an altercation at a nearby 7-Eleven store just before the shootings. They showed his photograph to Brian and Watson, and both identified him as the gunman. Within days, detectives have found the murder weapon in a car registered to Armstrong's stepfather. They found a sweatshirt with gun residue in Armstrong's house. But it wasn't until the next year when Armstrong's former girlfriend, Taiska Webster, came forward that police connected him to Christopher Florence's death. Webster said Armstrong had told her he shot Christopher because he thought he was a rival gang member. He also admitted shooting the other 2 brothers, she said. Prosecutors believe Michael and Tori Florence were set up and lured into an ambush by Armstrong. Defense attorneys argued that the brothers were seeking revenge when they went out looking for Christopher's killers. In his view, said Franklin Peters, Armstrong's lawyer, it was his life or theirs. Armstrong testified that he acted in self-defense when he shot Tori and Michael. He denied killing Christopher. Jurors didn't believe him. They convicted Armstrong of killing the three brothers and recommended he receive the death penalty. Armstrong was convicted in 2004 of first-degree murder for the September 27, 2001 killing of 21-year-old Christopher Florence and the shooting deaths of two of his brothers, Michael and Tori, 2 days later. Armstrong, who maintained that he had nothing to do with Christopher Florence's killing and that he shot the other two brothers in self-defense, was sentenced to death in 2005. Rowdy Nation TV, click that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so anytime I drop a video, you guys can be notified. We out.